Good morning, members, and good morning to the officers we've got online. Welcome to the Countryside Rights of Way panel on Friday the 12th of February, obviously today. Cold weather outside, but I've noticed how many more people are using footpaths and rights of way, so quite fantastic that we're doing the job we are doing. Can I first of all ask for any apologies, please? Zach?
Yeah, morning, Chairman. No, I'm not in receipt of any apologies.
Okay, thank you very much. And item 2, declaration of interest in accordance with Standing Orders 16 points.
The
only thing I would say is that I'm the divisional member for Seiford, which is mentioned in item number 5, but I've got no interest in that, just for clarity. And we move on, please, to the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of January. Are members happy with them?
True record.
Record, Chairman. I'll second Alan's proposal.
Are we all happy with that? No, anything, so that's fine. Thank you. And we'll move on to item number 4, which is Countryside and Wildlife Act 1981, section 53, and it's an application for a public footpath between Kingsford Lane and Compton Road. Which officer is going to give the presentation on this one?
That's me, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. As you're aware, this application is for the addition of a public footpath between Kingsford Lane and Compton Road in Kimber.
Alan, it's your thing, please. Your papers are making noises.
Oh, yes, very good, sir.
Thank you. So yes, this is to consider an application from Mr. Martin Ray in the district of Kimber. The applicant in this instance has submitted a tracing from the Kimber Compton Common Enclosure Award from 1774. A tracing has been provided of the award map, and also the applicant has submitted a tithe map. Bear with me, sorry. Yes, a plan for the parish of Kimber, a tithe award from 1856. The Kimber Enclosure Award shows the route as a double dotted line connecting from Compton Road and running across 2 plots of land in a southeasterly direction, connecting to what appears to be another mains carriageway, although this is not named on the tracing. The award itself, the reference to the footpath on that award is detailed in your report. I won't go into the detail again of the specific word, and you do have that in front of you. The award itself indicates that that double dotted line runs through plots XX1 and XX2, and it was classified as a public foot road, therefore indicating that this pathway was to be used on foot. With regards to the tithe award, the applicant's provided another tracing again, and you do have a copy. The plan shows a single dotted line running through plots 982 and 983. This route connects the 2 separate carriageways, although there isn't anything on the plan to identify the names of those carriageways. Initially, the landowners responded to the application. The National Trust was one of the landowners, and individual farm owners. And Mr. Trevor Ives completed a questionnaire in 1998 when he was informed of the application. He advised that he didn't own the land, and his view was that the alleged path was unnecessary as there was a path running adjoining to that land. He did advise of a further landowner who actually owned the farm, the field in question. The application was then sent to a Mr. Brown, but there's been no response, and the National Trust did not respond to the application either at that time. Kimber Parish Council advised that their members didn't have any knowledge of the path and they were unable to comment. They didn't have any documentary evidence to support or refute the claim, and the Ramblers Association advised that they also didn't have any additional evidence, but they did believe that this footpath was a continuation of footpath 38 and 15. With regards to enclosure acts, they, as you will be aware from your previous training, they are acts of Parliament and they are designed to enclose old commons and small holdings to increase agricultural productivity. There is a preamble to the Act, and unfortunately in this instance it's not been included in with the application. This will have set out the Commissioner's powers as to whether they can create or divert or extinguish public and private highways. However, the award itself does describe the creation of one public foot-road, and that it does state that they set out and appoint, which is suggestive of the creation of a new route rather than referring to an existing route. There is no indication from the award map as to whether Compton Road and Kingsford Road were public or private highways. However, it's unlikely that the Commissioners would connect a public highway to a private route with lesser rights. The evidence that's been provided, such as this court order, to advise that the route should not have been created or was extinguished. The fact that this route was shown on the award map and referred to as a public foot-road within the award is supportive evidence of the existence of a public right-of-way along that route. Following circulation of the report, the South Staffordshire Council advised that they didn't have any objections. There were comments received from Mr Brown from Pigeon Farm, and you have copies attached to Appendix F. He advised that the proposed line crosses an arable block of land which is used for rotational cropping, including potatoes, etc. And he employs modern machinery and automatic irrigation of that land. He also refers to a well-used footpath which runs parallel to this line, and it has been enhanced by the National Trust with benches, and there's a quiet country lane on the other side. In relation to the tithe map, the tithe map itself is not sufficient evidence on its own to explain the status of the routes. However, it is good supporting documentation. There isn't any evidence to state the status of the route. It's just depicted as a single dotted line on the tithe map. And as I say, on its own, it isn't enough. However, in conjunction with the enclosure award, it's supportive that the route did exist along that right of way and that it did have public rights. And as you will be aware, that there are the two tests that need to be satisfied in order to be clear that there is the existence of a right of way on that route. Those are the two tests of the balance of probabilities and reasonable allegation. In relation to if you consider the whole evidence together, solely in relation to the enclosure award, there is good evidence that the public footpath was created along that route. It's unlikely that that footpath would have connected two separate carriageways that didn't have a similar status. Unfortunately, as I've said, because there wasn't the preamble to the Act which set out the powers of the Commissioners, it's in your officer's opinion, it doesn't satisfy the test of the balance of probabilities. However, when the lesser test is considered with the tithe evidence, that of reasonable allegation, it is your officer's opinion that the footpath does exist. So therefore, it is the recommendation of your officers to add a public footpath along the line shown on Appendix B to the definitive map and statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Could I just quickly say that Councillor Victoria Wilson is local member. Does Victoria want to say anything on this?
Good morning, Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity. I have absolutely no objections to this. I would probably defer to yourselves as the experts, really, but I have no objections whatsoever.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'll pass this over to members now for comment, please.
Well, all I'd like to say is this a brand new route, or is is there an adjoining route or an adjoining pathway that people have been using over a numerous amount of years, which takes them away from walking through the middle of the field along to the side of the field? Can you tell me that, Claire?
I think it's possible from the evidence that's been provided and the comments that have been made by landowners that there is a route that is parallel to this. And as you know, with historical claims, this is from 1774, the Enclosure Act, when it was first set out. I think it's possible that there is a route. It's difficult to say as to whether people have decided not to use this route and they are now using an adjoining one. Mm-hmm. But it's certainly from the landowners' comments that there is certainly a route that does run parallel to this one.
But I just want to ask, if we create this path or we accept the recommendation, are we creating a new route which is going to be of a nuisance to the farmer going straight through his field? He states that, well, the route states we're going through his field.
Could I just Claire, rather than ask you a direct question like that, because I think that's possibly slightly unfair, but you please, when I've finished speaking, say your bit. In terms of the legality of it, this route, the straight question for me is, if this route has been proven and it's legal, do we have a reason to object to it, or are we sort of, even though there is an alternative route which people use, is it a legal entity in your opinion? Claire?
Yes, I mean the route, the decision for you today is to decide on this route. It isn't to take into consideration if a route does run parallel or crosses the route. It is purely the evidence in relation to this route. Yes, you can have two routes that run side by side. I'm not aware of the status of the route that may run down the side of it. I'm not aware that it is a right of way. I will stand to be corrected on that. I haven't actually written this report. I don't know if my colleague Hannah is listening to this report. I'm not sure if she is aware of the status of the route that may run parallel to this. But effectively, we are here to make a decision on just purely the evidence for this route.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying in relation to maybe one that may run parallel. But in relation, you could have 3 or 4 routes that run exactly side by side, but it's the status of the routes that that's come into question in relation to this route.
Okay. Are you okay with
I accept that, Claire, and on the basis that there's been no actual objection to the proposed route, then, Chair, can I move we accept the recommendation?
Yeah, thank you. Before then, I've got 2 speakers who want to speak. I've got David Brooks and David Smith. David Brooks, please.
Thank you. I'm pleased Mr. Dodson has raised that, because quite often we have a lot of these footpaths that across land, they've never been used. And then if somebody's found something that might even be a fold in a map that could be interpreted 200 years later as a line or a pencil line, or be misinterpreted, then clearly there's almost no justification. And I can't see the point in opening up a route across the middle of a field when the area is well serviced to actually support this. I know there's always an element of doubt and all the rest of it, but having read the report, I'm not convinced, Chairman. I'm not convinced at all that I can support this recommendation.
Thank you, David. And David Smith, please.
Chairman, I think we find ourselves in a quandary over this report. If you look at the documentation, I think it's quite clear that a footpath did exist, and that if we're simply taking the straightforward evidence the recommendation of the officers, we have little choice but to approve that recommendation. But I do have a concern when we look at the age of some of the evidence, and I'm particularly looking at the evidence from Valehead Farm, where the comment is made about the footpath. It doesn't quite say so in many words, but it implies that the footpath has not been used for some time, and goes straight through the middle of a field. It concerns me that, and also on the next application, that modern farming is not quite the safe sort of meander across a field that it used to be. You would know as well as I do that modern farming techniques can make crossing a field in some cases a dangerous business. And so it worries me that the evidence is very old. The letter from Valehead Farm is 22 years old. We don't have any evidence of usage. Say, I walk this footpath daily and have the number of people that do. So it looks to me like somebody's looked at a map and said, oops, there's a footpath here which isn't in use. But we ought to make sure that it is properly recorded as a footpath and is in use as a footpath and almost recreated as a walkway. Possibly, well, we don't have evidence of regular usage, that the footpath is actually currently even being used. So I think it does put us into a quandary. I would like, if I was looking with my heart, to refuse the application. But if I'm looking at my head, I don't think we have any choice but to approve it. I wondered what the officers' views were on that. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, if I can just clarify, this application is purely based on historical evidence, so there doesn't need to be proof of use of that footpath. This does come up on quite a lot of our matters that we deal with, where farmers and landowners will contact and say that there is no evidence of use on that, but this is not what we're considering in this case. We are considering something from 1774, and we haven't found and discovered evidence since that date that would show that that footpath has been stopped up or extinguished or diverted. So yes, the evidence is very old, and I appreciate the evidence is old in relation to the landowners. However, there hasn't been a legal event that has stopped the use of that footpath, and it may well not exist on the ground anymore, and it may or may not be the case that it has been diverted unofficially onto a path parallel. But in relation to the evidence, it is purely historical evidence, and that's what you need to consider, and not usage at this present time.
Could I please bring in Paul Snape next, and then Alan Gibson?
Thank you, Chairman. The last training we had on Section 63 was the 19th of June last year. We were given a full list of reasons why couldn't turn down such an application, and the age of the age of the historic documents was not one of those, really. And the conclusion of that training was really that, in effect, anything that does not relate to the existence of a highway, whether for or against it, can't be used, really. So really, on the evidence that we've been given by our officers, I know it's not with the balance of probabilities, but the evidence is there that a footpath existed, and matters like stock control or he actually farms the field are not reasons to turn it down. So really, I can't see any reason why this matter should be turned down on this occasion. So I will be going with the officer recommendation.
Could I please, for clarity, and I know the answer, but I will ask the question of officers, if this or any other footpath across the fields which is causing problems for the farmer or whatever enterprise is there, is there it will cost, but am I right in saying that there's a capacity for or capability to get that footpath moved?
Yes, it's possible for the landowner to apply for a diversion of that route, and as you say, there will be costs involved in that. And obviously the diverted route will need to be agreed with if it's not onto their own land, obviously adjoining land, etc. But yes, it is possible for the landowner to apply for a diversion.
Okay, thank you. I've got David Brooks' hand up. David Smith's hand up. Do either of you want to speak again?
Yes, Chairman.
David Brooks.
Yeah, quite happy to, thank you. David Smith put it so eloquently and so very well, as he always does in his usual style. These type of paths that were there almost 300 years ago, or suggest they were there 300 years ago, might have served a purpose. And in law, we probably do have to recognise that something that was there 300 years ago served a purpose, and we're now being asked to actually put that into the modern 21st century. Well, it isn't practical, Chairman, is it? It's just a nonsense, an absolute nonsense. Yes, there might have been a crease in a map, there might have been a pencil line on a map. It might have served a purpose, and it might have served a purpose by somebody who might have lived in whatever accommodation they had at that time, 300 years ago, to actually go and get some water, or go and get some, or go and visit, or do anything, or go and seek employment somewhere. But because that was a route they used, I don't firmly believe that legally is a footpath. I think there needs to be a greater recognition of the fact that what went on 300 years ago doesn't fit necessarily in today's modern world. And the aspiration of the people who object to or identify these footpaths in the middle of nowhere is more about their own personal amenity than any actual practicality of what the footpath is. In my division, the County Council is spending a considerable amount of money enhancing and improving footpaths that provide real links to allow people to enjoy the amenities of the countryside. Some of these things, they're a nonsense to me, and really there needs to be a complete shake-up of it. If we're not careful, by allowing these sort of daft things, we're actually inhibiting productive agriculture just for the sake of it, because somebody can do, and they've found this. They've got nothing else to do other than find this in years ago and suggest that this has some sort of evidence. I can't support this recommendation, Chairman, at all.
Thank you, David. David Smith, your hand's up. Did you want to speak?
Chairman, we're stuck with the law as it stands, not as we may wish it to be. And so I think that's the basis under what we've got to consider the application. It concerned me, as far as the officer's point was concerned, is that the applicant could apply for a diversion order. But looking at our current backlog, it's possibly unlikely that we would consider the diversion order at the present rate in less than 10 to 20 years, in which case the case was originally raised 21 years ago. It could be 41 years before that diversion order is ever considered from the date of the original application. So it doesn't really give the farmer a solution. The other thing I was going to say, and it also comes up on the next application, which we need to consider, if something just goes through the middle of an open field, what sort of marking is there to show the line of the footpath? I have a situation literally opposite my house where there's a public footpath, but it's very, very easy to follow because it goes from the access into the field through to a group of trees. So people, once the field has been ploughed, they make a natural line and the footpath follows pretty well the same line it's always followed. When it just goes across an open field with no markers, you could effectively have people just wandering willy-nilly across the field and claiming it's a public footpath. So unless there's some sort of marking that shows the line of the footpath, I think that it could be a great hazard to the farmer And I think that's a concern for both this and the next application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Dodson, last word.
Thank you, Chair. I completely understand Councillor Brooks in what he's saying. The only problem is we have if we was to turn this application down and there is an appeal, there is far more time consuming handling an appeal that I think we would lose anyway on the evidence base, on the evidence in front of we. So that's why, unfortunately, I don't think we have any option really but to approve the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. So we've got a proposal from Mr. Dodson that we follow the officer's recommendation, and that was seconded by Paul Snape. Obviously, David Brooks, can you confirm that you will be against this?
Chairman, I wish to confirm that I will be voting against this.
Okay. I'll just go through. David Smith, how would you like to vote on this?
I reaffirm the point we made before. I would like to vote against, but on the basis of the evidence, I don't think we have a choice and ask for a vote in favour.
And it's just me finally. Being a farmer, I can see absolutely what's been said by David Brooks and by Alan Dodson. A lot of these footpaths were between two holdings because before a lot of roadways actually existed. So I can see exactly what David Brooks is saying. However, we are tied down by national law on this, and I will go with the officer's recommendation to allow this. So on numbers, this application follows the officer's recommendations. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to item number 4. There we go. We'll move on to item number 5. And this is the application for the upgrade of public footpath 26, Cyford Parish, to bridleway status. Who's deal with this one?
That's me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members. This application is from Mr. Martin Ray to upgrade footpath 26 to a bridleway in Cyford. The applicant has submitted 5 pieces of historical evidence in support of their application. They are a Surveyors of Highways report book dated 1903, an auction particulars dated 1813, Finance Act material 1910, and Cyford and Worston tithe map, and also numerous county maps. In his application, the applicant states that the route seems to be a bridleway from Worston and Shallowford to Great Bridge Ford and Stafford. The route stays to the east of the River Sow and avoids crossing it. The alternative route from Worston and Shallowford to Great Bridge Ford and Stafford is along Worston Lane, which crossed the River Sow through a ford and was slightly further. The ford was replaced with a bridge last century. This created better conditions on the alternative route and became the main route from Worston to Great Bridgeford and Stafford. The route of the bridleway was not legally closed, though, and remains today only as a footpath. This application seeks to give the route its proper status as a bridleway. When the application was initially submitted, there was 2 landowners identified. There was a Mr. G.A. Brown of Bridgeford Hall Farm and a Mrs. P. McGregor of Worston Stables. The 2 landowners returned their owner-occupier evidence forms detailing the extent of their ownership. At a later date, it was discovered that land ownership was split between other landowners. one being McGregor and Whitfeld jointly, and the other being Mr. J. Alt of Fieldhouse Farm. All the relevant user groups and statutory consultees were informed of the alleged route. Peak and Northern Footpath Society responded in support of the application. Seiford Parish Council responded stating they had no objection to the footpath being upgraded to bridleway status, provided no access to be given to powered vehicles. The Border Bridleways Association responded stating they supported the proposal as it would remove a bridleway from cul-de-sac status and provide safe off-road riding. North Staffordshire Bridleways Association responded stating great support for this bridleway claim. They added if the definitive status of the route was upgraded, it would be of great benefit to local horse riders as it connects two fairly good riding roads and is an alternative to having to ride along the busy A5 103 main road, which is a feeder route to the nearby M6 junction. It also provides an alternative to having to use a very narrow and hazardous railway bridge. In addition, it would add some off-road content to a circular ride connecting to the Potteries Ring route at Stone. The Ramblers Association responded stating that the documentary evidence appears to be conclusive in confirming this route as once capable of carrying horse-drawn vehicles and therefore a bridleway which was subsequently downgraded to a footpath. The return to a bridleway status would be of benefit to horse riders in this area. Going back to looking at the evidence, the applicant relies on numerous historical maps. In the Planning Inspectorate's consistency guidelines, it indicates that when dealing with old maps and plans, it is the consistent occurrence of a route in successive documents that strengthens the evidence for its existence. A one-off appearance could, it suggests, be an error, and that consistent depiction over a number of years is a positive indication. Moving on to the 1910 Finance Act material, this shows the route passing through plot 1107 of field 42. It then links to the end of Cherry Lane, which is shown separate from taxable land as a road. The field book entry 1107 indicates that there are public rights of way, including a bridle road and two footpaths. It is the applicant's belief that this route is the bridle road referred to. This is supported by the fact that the Surveyors of Highways Report Book of 1903 also refers to the route as a bridle path. The Surveyors of Highways Report Book of 1903, as mentioned, shows that a complaint was received from Worston about the condition of a bridleway at the Worston end. The surveyor states the other end of the bridleway on the Great Bridgeford side of the brook has been repaired by the parish, but this length is more of the nature of a road as it has a hedge on either side. When viewed alongside the nearest Ordnance Survey map of 1901, the route is shown to cross over a brook and into Cherry Lane on the Great Bridgeford side. This appears to be the only route that the surveyors could be referring to. Moving on to the Worston and Seiford tithe map of 1845, this shows the route passing through plot 18 as a narrow open road. The symbol used to denote the way is consistent with what was used to denote bridleways on tithe maps where they cross fields. However, tithe maps show both public and private routes, and so this alone cannot provide definitive proof of the status of the way. However, the tithe map may be used as good supporting evidence. Lastly, looking at the auction particulars of the Worston estate sale of 1813, there is an accompanying map, and this indicates the route was a bridleway from Stafford. The auction catalogue for Lot 1 indicates plot 249 Gospel Field and states that Lord Anson has a right of carriageway through this field. This does suggest the path has higher rights, but it is not clear as to whether these were public or private. Also, this was never intended to be a public or legal document, and Given that it was produced at the request of the landowner, then it has legal limited weight. It could be only viewed as supporting evidence at best. On circulation of the report, Mr. Holt responded, stating he strongly objects to any change which could take good quality land out of production and require a 3-metre width across his field with a legal requirement to keep it clear. He further states he will consider any reasonable financial compensation to give land for this purpose, and any new path would have to be clearly marked because currently there are members of the public walking off the correct route between footpath 26 and 28, either turning right through the field gates or walking along the stream north of the sewage works. In answer to these comments, your officers responded with, the council do not operate a compensation scheme. Nonetheless, this will be brought to the attention of the panel. Regarding people straying from the existing footpaths, we are happy to pass this on to our colleagues in rights of way to see if they can offer any help with signage. Mr. Holt responded with any extra signage might help to keep people on the right track across his field, and he is happy for the request to be relayed. With regard to the bridleway, he cannot accept this unless it is this is by compulsory purchase. He further states farming is his livelihood and he is not prepared to give away a strip of land for members of the public to ride a horse on. With regard to the status of the route, the burden is on the applicant to show that on the balance of probabilities that it is more likely to subsist as a bridleway than not. The existing status must remain unless until the panel is of the view that the definitive mapping statement should be amended. If the evidence is evenly balanced, then the existing definitive mapping statement prevails. To conclude, the evidence of the Finance Act, when taken together with the Surveyors of Highway report book, the tithe map and the other maps as supporting evidence, then it can be shown that the route appears to be shown consistently in most cases as a bridleway. It is the opinion of your officers that the County Council should make a modification order to upgrade footpath 26 Seiford, which is the subject of this application, to a bridleway on the definitive mapping statement of public rights of way for the district of Stafford. Thank you, Chair and members.
Right, as local member myself, all I would say is I've had no representations on this, so and the parish council have said that they're quite happy as long as there's no powered vehicles. So I've got Mr. Dudds has just put his hand up, but previously David Brooks has, and also David Smith. So David Brooks first, please.
Chairman, this again, from what I've seen, basically, Lord Anson, who probably owned the land at the time, chose to use a route for his own personal amenity. So now it's been raked over by all the people who want to have a free-for-all over the British countryside and farmland, choose to put in an appeal to suggest that because Lord Anson used it for his personal amenity, it becomes a bridleway. It's just a daft nonsense, Chairman, just a daft nonsense. There might be a footpath close by, but to open it up as a bridleway is a travesty, Chairman. I should be voting against it.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't entirely agree with David Brooks, but I think there are some issues that come out of here which I don't think would change our decision, but I think are fairly critical to what we're looking at. Firstly, I don't agree with the comments that have been made about the legality of the auction sale details. They may not in themselves provide the legal evidence, but they are a pointer to the terms of sale. And so the conditions of sale and the documentation that would follow from that do become legal documents. And therefore, if one looked at the original deeds from that date, I think it would clearly recognise what was in the auction sale details. And so I accept that the auction sale details are not conclusive in their own particular way, but it's buyer beware. And I would have believed that the farmer in perpetuity would have been fully aware of the fact that there was a bridleway across the land. Having said that, it would appear that the bridge is in a bad state, so I suspect that the bridleway has not been used as a footpath either. Is the parish council going to accept responsibility for the repair of that bridge, which is going to be a significant amount of money if it's going to be able to carry traffic for a bridleway? I totally agree about the necessity for footpath marking. I would come back again to the fact that farming can become a very dangerous business, and there's a reference to the irrigation of the land. Does the farmer have to avoid putting his quite powerful irrigation and water spraying equipment so that it doesn't affect the footpath? Lord Anson, I accept that those may not be legal rights, but I think that the other paperwork does defend that. And so I suppose we're dealing with the ghost of Lord Anson. I haven't seen, again, the evidence of usage, which I think is unfortunate. Perhaps sometimes on these things, it would be quite useful if we had photographs brought to the committee so that we could actually see the physical state of an application as it is as of today. And also, I totally agree that we have no liability for compensation. So if we decided today, then it's inevitable that the farmer is going to lose a wider strip of his land, which is very unfortunate when we're looking at the pressures on food production. But that's the way the law goes. And I think that, again, we've got little choice but to approve the application. I think it raises a lot of points that David Brooks has raised about, do we have some of these footpaths which have become obsolete, that we just go along and reopen them again and highlight them? I have grave concerns about that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Dodson. You're on mute. Alan, you're on mute. Thank you. Oh, still on mute.
Sorry. Whilst I have every sympathy for Councillor Brooks and in agreement with Councillor Smith, when we look at page 62, which is the letter from Seaford Parish Council from the clerk, Derek Jones, is there, Samantha, is there a way that if we accept this bridleway, we can stop any powered vehicles going along it?
It's a difficult one. There can be things that are put in the way. I mean, signage can be erected, but it's difficult to place anything as a kind of a barrier or anything to prevent, because we can't prevent or obstruct the actual route. So, I mean, hopefully, you know, the actual route is maybe it's narrow. I'm not familiar with the actual route myself, but whether it's not amenable to support vehicles.
I'm not particularly worried about the vehicle, 4 wheels. I'm more worried about 2 wheels. If people with motorbikes want to start using it as a racetrack.
Right, okay. we can't really, I mean, we can't take anything like this into account. I can understand that obviously it being used in that way would compromise the safety of users of the route, but unfortunately it's not something that we could take into account, the safety of the actual route.
Chair, can I answer that point, please?
Yes, yeah.
Chair, under section 34(1, the Road Traffic Act 1988, as amended by the Countryside and Rights of Way Act 2000, it's a criminal offence to drive a mechanically propelled vehicle on a footpath, bridleway or restricted way without lawful authority. A lawful authority would be like a police vehicle, a fire engine, something like that. So really, there's no reason why any mechanically propelled vehicle, car, van, etc. should be on it, and if they are, they're committing a criminal offence.
Yeah, I think just following on from what Paul's just said, I was told on my training that it was actually greenways were a little bit of a different classification. This is a bridleway, and it's a four-legged or at the most, but it's not anyone can use it for vehicles. It does say bridleway. Now, just before we go any further towards the vote, on page 68, there is a comment from David Atkins, and I think David's on the line, about the width of the footpath, the bridleway or footpath. Now, just for me, is there a footpath there at the moment? How wide is it? Number one. Number two, if it's a bridleway, do we want to restrict the width of that bridleway? Could you comment, please, David?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, we do have a public right-of-way there at the moment, which is 1.8 metres wide. So we have the sort of the standard 1.8 metre width. Obviously, we've had comments from the landowner concerned about a 3 metre width being taken out of the field, out of his land. As this is a cross-field path, we could look at imposing or suggesting a minimum width of 2 metres, because this path goes across the field rather than a field edge path. So a 2 metre width, I think, would be acceptable from our perspective. There could also be a limitation to make a maximum width of 3 metres, depending on what the members agreed.
Okay. Could I just ask again, I'll go to Paul in a second. In terms of that 2 metres, can we make it a minimum 2 metres and a maximum 2 metres?
That's an option I think we could consider. I don't see any legal reason why we couldn't. Certainly, we've got to have a minimum of 2 metres. It's a cross field path, bridleway. As to the maximum, that can be often in statements undefined. Though it's not improbable that or impossible that we could state a maximum width in this case or in any case. So I think it would be up to the members to decide whether they would recommend or whether we would recommend, Sam, Claire, a maximum width. I think certainly we need the minimum width. We need the 2 metre. But would we, in this case, given the landowner's comments, would we sort of recommend a maximum of 3 metres or 2 metres?
Okay, I've got Paul who wants to speak.
Thank you, Chair. What I spoke before was just to basically say the position in mechanically propelled vehicles. I don't often go against officer recommendation, but on this occasion, but it's item 36 of our document talks with burden of standard proof and balance of probabilities. And on this occasion, I don't know really if the balance of probabilities is there to upgrade to a bridleway. We have horses, and I know what bridleways are and where they are normally. And it's very unusual for them to cross a field the way that this one's going to. I really believe that the evidence isn't made out, that it should be put to a bridleway. So on this occasion, even though Councillor Dudson and Councillor Smith have made good reports on this, and I really believe I'm going to go with David Brooks on this for the reasons Dave's given.
Okay, David Brooks, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Snape. I concur exactly with what you've said. If you are minded, Chairman, to approve this, then I would suggest a maximum width, absolute maximum width of 2 metres.
Okay, thank you. I've got David Smith next, please, and then Alan Goodson.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I think a number of things. I think I'm correct in saying in the report it states that the footpath or the bridleway was originally marked by a hedge line and that hedge line's been removed. That's unfortunate because it takes away the clarity of the line across the field. I think that in the conditions, it clearly excludes the use of motorcycles and motor vehicles. It would be for horses and the proper traditional use of a bridleway. I believe that as at this moment, it would not be usable as a bridleway because of the state of the footbridge or what would become a bridge that able to take horses. And I would totally support the recommendation that it's a maximum of 2 metres. If we need a proposal on that, Chairman, I'm happy to.
Okay, so can we just go to Alan Dodson, please?
I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? I've lost vision.
Yeah, got you.
Well, I will go along with Councillor Brooks on what he stated earlier. Yes, I can support Councillor Smith in recommending the application, providing that the bridleway is no wider than 2 metres.
Okay, so I think we come to a vote at this point if everyone's happy with it. Am I right in asking someone, probably David Smith, did you have a proposal with the 2 metre one in?
Yeah, Chairman, I'm happy to propose approval of the officer's recommendation with the addition of an item that makes it clear that it is a maximum of 2 metres, not 3 metres. Is that satisfactory, Chairman?
Thank you. Just before we go any further, just from the officers, is that a legal proposition?
Yes, I mean, there's no actual set maximum width. There's just clearly the minimum width, obviously, that, you know, because it's got to safely, horses have got to pass by. So there's no actual legal set width, maximum, width that it's got to be. So that's fine, yeah.
Okay, so we've got a proposal from David Smith that we follow the officer's recommendation with an amendment that there's a minimum of 2 metres and a maximum of 2 metres on this bridleway. Is that seconded by anyone?
I'll second that, Chair.
So that's thank you, Mr. Dodson. So we'll take a vote on it, please. Because it's slightly contentious, I'll go around everyone and ask them what they want to do. David Smith, you said you agree with, you proposed it, so that's okay. Mr. You seconded it. Mr. Snape?
I'm going to vote against this one on this occasion because I don't think it means the balance of probabilities.
Thank you. And Mr. Brooks?
I'm voting against it, Chairman, although if it was carried, then the 2 metre I would be comfortable with.
Okay, thank you. And as chair, obviously I'll go along with the officer's recommendation. However, I agree entirely with the premise that it's 1.8 at the moment, but it will have to be a maximum of 2 metres and a minimum of 2 metres. So there's a slight increase from what we've got at the moment. And as far as my maths is concerned, that recommendation has been passed. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
thank you. And my notes is at the end of the meeting. Right. Have we an exclusion of the public? Okay, right. We go on to item 6, which is exclusion of the public. And I move that the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business, which involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraph of Part 1 of Schedule 12A, as amended, of the Local Government Act 1972 indicated below. Thank you, any members of the public that have listened to this, and we'll wait for the meeting to be officially offline.